Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Aisyah binti Syaiful Jamiza Azura and my team for this project, Khalila Afiqah binti Jamil, Muhammad Fadli bin Muhammad Saleh and Nur Atira Aiman binti Muhammad Salihuddin. Today, we will be presenting our project for ITT633. The title for our project is Configuration Backup Automation. Network automation is the process of automating the configuring, managing, testing, deploying, and operating of physical and virtual devices within a network. Any type of network can use network automation. Currently, backups are a very important part of day-to-day operation because it is very useful when a device fails or configuration needs to be rolled back. This project will schedule Cisco config backups. We are using cron and archive to backup configs to TFTP servers and will do the backup every week. TFTP is UDP-based and the protocol Cisco devices use to backup the iOS image and configuration files to a remote server. This project uses Cisco cron's functionality for command scheduling and we set the configuration to backup every week. This will allow us to execute predefined commands on a scheduled basis. We also use Cisco Archive functionality for configuration management. Archive is a way to store multiple copies of the config in the sequential and roll back configs if needed to a previous version. Problem statement for this project. Nowadays, with too many devices to manage manually, administrators end up dealing with network downtime caused due to erroneous configuration changes. Automation of network configuration management simplifies process like scheduling backups, helps user to easily locate a backup file at the time of need. Router and switches often get upgraded or swapped out for several reasons. Hence, it is important to maintain the latest and history of the routers and switch configuration files. Backup Cisco Switch Config tool helps to maintain the startup config and runtime configuration files of the Cisco router or switch. The objective of this project are capture every changes made to the device configurations automatically. Second, avoid manual configurations backup by scheduling backups and get alert when there is interruption or failure. The second chapter is literature review.
A virtual machine is a computing resource that runs programs and deploys applications using software instead of a physical computer. Virtual machine runs its operating system and even though they are all running on the same host, operates independently from the other VMs. Virtual machine technology used in on-site and cloud environment in several ways. Most recently, public cloud providers use virtual machine to provide many users with virtual application tools at once for even more cost-effective and scalable computing. GNS3 is a free open-source client-server interface for network emulation and virtualization. It is a framework based on Python that primarily uses dynamics to simulate Cisco software and hardware. There are three benefits of using GNS3. The first one is an active topology modifiable. It is possible to start and stop each virtual network device independently of other virtual network devices. The second one is form of multiple links, and GNS3 allow Ethernet connection between network devices. It also makes it possible to communicate serially between devices supporting serial network modules. The third one is Community Lab. The GNS3 marketplace has a segment that allows you to trade network topologies for labeling unique technologies, mostly used to distribute and install network interface appliances. The FTP server is used for simple file transfer, typically for bootloading remote devices. The FTP is a simple protocol for exchanging files between two TCP/IP machines. The FTP server allows connection for sending and receiving files from a TFTP client. The TFTP protocol only sends and receives the file operations. Deleting, transferring, and renaming files are not allowed.
Chapter 3, Methodology.
Assalamualaikum. Hi, my name is Khalila Afika Jamil. Next is Chapter 3 for Methodology. We will look into the project description. Since most of the organization works in an extensive network, it is hard to perform backup manually. For this type of situation, Cisco has introduced automatic backup technique by using cron. Network administrator will create a cron policy list which will set the scheduled time. Then create the cron occurrence to tell the router when and how often the policy should run. All data that need backup will be stored in the TFTP server since the router often gets swapped or updated. The periodicity for every Cisco device's backup network configuration file is detected and established by the organization policies. The frequency could be variant depending on the organization's needs. The archive command was then introduced into Cisco IOS that enables the administrator to configure the configuration files snapshots. The network configuration files are important for compare and validate configurations between devices. In case of any damage to equipment, configuration files could be used to restore the network's operational state. At this point, it is very easy for an administrator to backup the configuration files. Then we move to project flowchart. Before inserting the new configuration, the network administrator must first make sure there is no problem with the network configuration and the router must be able to access the TFTP server. Use the ping command to verify the connectivity. The purpose of this action is to identify if there is any problem. For example, a network admin can identify which device is currently down. The router will then detect any user changes when the user logs in and out of the network device. If it detects any data changes, all data will be backed up to the TFTP server. This is where cron method is applied. The network administrator can set any suitable time or day for backup their file automatically. After that, the backup file will be stored automatically by configuring the router with the archive command. These archive files serve as checkpoint configuration reference and can revert the configuration to a previous state using configure replace command. The archive configuration allows saving Cisco configuration using a standard location and file name prefix that is automatically appended with an incremental version number. This functionality provides consistent identification of saved configuration files. The network administrator can specify how many versions of the running configuration are kept in the archive. After the maximum number of files are saved in the archive, the oldest file is automatically deleted when the next most recent file is saved, but the previous file still can be retrieved by show archive command.
This is the physical topology that we use in this project.
For technical specification, software that we use are Windows 10 for the operating system. Then network simulator, we were using JNS3 and VMware Workstation Pro 16 for a virtual machine. During this testing project, hardware that we use are laptop, router module Cisco 2911 in GNS3 and Ubuntu server for TFTP server running in GNS3.
Chapter 4. Result and Analysis.
This is the Network Configuration Backup Automation project. This project will serve all the configuration on TFTP server by using cron scheduler and archive the configuration file. Configuration will be stored and archived it to the specific time. For example, we set the time, which is 2 minutes, and the configuration backup will be stored every 2 minutes on the TFTP server. This project also will check all the connectivity on the TFTP server, and there are two software to run this project, which are VMware and JNS3. Here I will show how to implement automatic configuration backup using the cron method. For example, we add new router, which is R4, to the network and backup all the configuration on R4. So firstly, we configure the R4. We type cron policy list, the name of file, config, and CLI show run redirect FTP. So before that, we need to know the TFTP server, the IP of the TFTP server. So that is config. So from that, we know that 192.168.0.2 is the IP of the TFTP server. Then we put it here, 168.0.2 slash the file we save the backup. So we name it r4 run.cfg. So next is we use command clone branch in one one is means 1 minute. So we set the time every 1 minute the configuration will be saved. So policy list backup config. So to verify the clone configuration, we use command show clone schedule. So if you want to more detail, we type debug clone all. So next we need to archive the file. So we type archive config enable keys visit. So next is we need to set the path of the file, which is all the file configuration on R4 will send to the FTP server. So path FTP server, we put the IP of the FTP server 192.168.0.2 slash, and then we write memory, and then we need to set time save. So we save here by every 2 minutes. So every 2 minutes, all configuration will be archived and will send to the FTP server. And then we so now R4 cannot reach to the FTP server if we ping it. So we try to ping the FTP server to 168.0.2. So we know that success rate is 0%, which is we cannot ping and R4 cannot reach to the FTP server. So the solution is we configure the static route. So go terminal. So we route 192.168.0.0. So 192.168.0.0 is the network of R4, which is the destination, and then the submit mask, and then the source 168.30.3. To verify that R4 can reach to the FTP server, we need to ping it 168.0.2. So we know that success rate is 100%, means that R4 can reach to the FTP server. So let's check whether the configuration file is saved on the FTP server or not, and the archive file also. So we go to directory tftp boot. So we can see here the first file r4-chrun.cfg, the configuration command, and this one is the archive file. So another one is from TFTP server, we need to check all the router is can connect to the FTP server. So we use the Python script. Uh, we move to directory playlist. If we want to ping to R4, we need to add the IP address of R4 to ips.txt. Txt. So we add below 192.168.30.2. So let's try to ping all the routers that connected to the FTP server. So we Python, then the Python script file, ping list, and then we also need to add the ips.txt, which is to import all the IPs to ping list.py. So here is the result after we run the Python script. So from here, we know that R1, R2, R3, and R4 is connected to the FTP server.
Chapter 5 Conclusion.
For conclusion, regulated backup is essential for protecting data. Besides, it is good practice for a network to keep a backup copy of the Cisco IOS software image of the router system image becomes corrupted or accidentally erased. Data backups usually are periodic and only can be saved in short term. Meanwhile, archiving data generally refers to long-term storage of data that is no longer in regular use but can be restored if needed. With proper network configuration and management, the network administrator can easily identify which of their network devices face a problem. This method could help a big organization handle their data management efficiently. There are few strengths that have been identified during the development of this project automation. First, backup data of file easily. Second, all data of files still can be retrieved. During the development of this project, some limitations were found. First, the storage media used within the archive should have a stable and long life to avoid frequent data migration. And second, apply different policy for a different type of data. And lastly, for future recommendation, first is reliability. To ensure the reliability of backup and recoverability data, all backup data must be made sure can be recovered. Second, security. The backup data must be secure from being attacked by a ransomware attack or the network being hijacked by malware.